They always sat in rows, perfect little rows, just like the school wanted them to, and in the very back of Mrs. Hamilton's 8th grade science class, behind the students with iPads, behind the girls who giggled and whispered about TikToks, behind the boys who threw paper when the teacher wasn't looking, sat Jayden. Jayden wore the same worn-out hoodie most days. His sneakers were a little too big, like he'd grown faster than his shoes could keep up. He didn't talk much, didn't raise his hand unless he knew the answer, absolutely knew it. And even then, he hesitated, because when Jayden spoke, people noticed his voice, not the words, his voice, that it was deeper, slower, different. "Too ghetto," one of the boys whispered once. They all noticed the same thing first. Jayden was the only black kid in the room, and for some reason, that made him funny to them. "Jayden, do you even get what she's talking about? Yo, Jay, how's life in the hood? Why don't you rap the answer, bro?" Every insult came with a laugh. Every laugh chipped away at something invisible inside Jayden. He never fought back, never told the teacher. Because snitches, well, you know how that goes. So he sat in the back, quiet, still, watching. He watched when kids asked dumb questions and still got praised. He watched when the teacher passed him over to call on someone who was wrong. He watched when the smart kids shared answers, but never with him. At first, Jayden thought it was just in his head, but it wasn't. One day, the class was learning about Newton's laws. Jayden had already read the chapter twice at home. He had watched videos about it on YouTube the night before. He even built a mini catapult out of popsicle sticks in his garage to test the second law. So when Mrs. Hamilton asked the class, "Can anyone explain Newton's third law of motion?" Jayden's hand went up, slowly, like he was unsure if it was allowed. Mrs. Hamilton looked around and called on Mason instead. Mason shrugged. Gravity?" The class laughed. Mrs. Hamilton chuckled too, then moved on. Jayden's hand was still up, but now it felt heavy. At lunch, Jayden sat alone, again, not because he didn't want friends, but because every time he tried to join, the conversation stopped. The jokes came out, the looks, like he was a visitor in a place that wasn't built for him. One day, a girl named Rachel sat down across from him. "Why are you always alone?" she asked. Jayden looked up, surprised. He didn't have an answer. Rachel tilted her head and smiled. "You should talk more. You're kinda smart, right?" She said it like it was weird, like it wasn't normal for someone like him. Jayden nodded once, and Rachel never sat there again. When he got home that day, Jayden went straight to the garage. It was the only place where he felt like himself, the only place where no one laughed. His grandpa Pops was already in there, fixing an old radio with wires everywhere. "Rough day, kid?" Pops asked without looking up. Jayden didn't answer, but the silence was enough. Pops smiled. "Good, that means your brain's still working." Jayden smirked, then grabbed a screwdriver and joined him. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Together, they built, they created, they tested things just to see what would happen. Here, Jayden wasn't the black kid in the back row. He was a scientist, but no one at school knew that. To them, he was just Jayden, from the bus, the one who wore second-hand clothes, the one who got free lunch. They never saw the boy who built his own wind turbine from junk parts, or the one who could recite the periodic table backwards, or the one who fixed a toaster with a paperclip. Because they didn't look, they didn't care to look, but they would. Soon, very soon, because Jayden was about to enter a competition that would change everything, and they'd all have to see him then, even the ones who had never truly seen him before. The science fair was announced on a gray Monday morning, the kind of morning that smelled like cold cereal and forgotten homework. Mrs. Hamilton stood at the front of the class, her glasses slipping down her nose, and tapped the whiteboard like it was supposed to make them care. "Your science fair project will be 40% of your grade this semester," she said. "It's mandatory. Presentations will happen in 6 weeks." Groans echoed through the room. Mason muttered something about just buying something online. Another kid asked if ChatGPT could do it. Jayden, sitting in the back, felt something stir in his chest. Not fear, not boredom, excitement. This was his moment. This was what he'd been waiting for. He didn't raise his hand, didn't say a word, but his fingers were already sketching ideas on the corner of his notebook. An idea was forming, fast. But the moment they heard he was entering, the laughter began. Yo, Jayden's gonna invent a time machine to go back and pass math class. Watch him build a cardboard box and call it science. Hope your hood project doesn't explode, bro. Jayden didn't respond. Not because he didn't want to, but because he knew they were watching him, waiting for a reaction. And sometimes silence hurts them more than words. Still, it stung, more than he let on. In group work, it got worse. They never picked him as a partner. Even when the teacher forced them into pairs, they did all the talking, used big words they barely understood just to sound smart. One day, as he was cleaning up beakers after class, Mason walked by and whispered, "You know you're just a diversity point, right? They only let you in here to make the photos look good." Jayden froze. Mason kept walking. That night he sat in the garage again. His notebook was open, pages filled with equations, diagrams, and designs. But his hands were still. Pops noticed. "You okay, kid?" Jayden shook his head. He looked up slowly and whispered, "They don't think I can do it. They think I'm stupid." Pops set his tools down, leaned back, and looked him dead in the eye. "Boy, the world's gonna laugh at you for everything. The way you walk, the way you talk, the way you think. But listen to me and listen good." He leaned forward. "What they laugh at today is what they'll clap for tomorrow. If, and only if, you keep building." Jayden blinked. Those words hit deep, and for the first time all day, he smiled, just a little. Then he picked up a pencil. At school, though, the mocking didn't stop. They made fake project posters with his name on them. Posted memes with Jayden's lab of lies in group chats. One student even edited his face onto a chimp in a lab coat and passed it around. The teacher didn't say much. Not really. "Let's be kind, class," Mrs. Hamilton muttered once. But she never looked at Jayden, never called it out for what it was. Jayden kept his head down. But his hands, they kept working. He started staying after school in the library, borrowing books no one else touched, reading college-level science, journals online, drawing blueprints on old scrap paper. One day, the librarian, Ms. Rivers, walked over and asked what he was building. He paused, hesitant. Then he whispered, "A self-sustaining water filtration system, powered by kinetic energy. No wires. No batteries, just motion." Ms. Rivers stared at him like he had just spoken in code. Then she smiled. "That's incredible. Do you need supplies? I can help." No one had said that to him in months, maybe years. Jayden nodded slowly, and something changed in his eyes. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about proving something, not to them, to himself. But the closer the science fair got, the louder the noise around him became. Whispers in the hall, snickers in the locker room. Even some parents gave him side eyes when he walked into the supply room. Jayden wasn't just building a project, he was building resistance. Brick by brick, screw by screw, circuit by circuit. They laughed, they mocked. They made sure he knew he didn't belong. But what they didn't know was that he had already decided. He wasn't building this project to fit in. He was building it to stand out. It started with a fan, an old rusted table fan that Pops had been meaning to throw away. Jayden took it apart, layer by layer, until he understood exactly how the blades moved, how the coil spun, how the motor caught the charge. He didn't have fancy tools. No 3D printers. No pre-built circuits. But he had curiosity, and quiet, and a little bit of garage magic. Each night after dinner, Jayden disappeared into that dimly lit garage, where the scent of motor oil and solder filled the air like incense in a secret temple. That place was his lab. With Pops by his side, humming old soul songs and tinkering with broken radios, Jayden sketched the blueprint for something bold. A compact, low-cost water filtration system that didn't require batteries or electricity. It would run on kinetic energy, motion, using simple magnets, a crank, and a recycled rotor. It's for places where there's no clean water, Jayden told Pops one evening, like villages in Africa or places hit by storms. If someone can just spin the handle for 30 seconds, they can purify a bottle of water. Pops blinked, then smiled slow. Boy, you're not just building a science project, you're building a lifeline. During the day, Jayden took notes at school in silence. He dodged insults like a boxer, slipping past sarcasm, ignoring sneers. But at night, he was alive. He rewired copper. He melted plastic with a lighter to form tubing. He used charcoal, gravel, and cloth to create layers of filtration. And when he finally got the crank to move the magnetic disc, the LED light blinked on, tiny, but bright. Jayden grinned, wide in the dark, like he'd just unlocked the stars. But it wasn't just science, it was survival. It was the only thing that made him feel seen. No judgment, no laughter, just gears and purpose. One night, as he tightened a bolt with trembling fingers, Pops placed an old photo beside him. In it, a young black boy, maybe Jayden's age, stood barefoot beside a dusty well. His hands held a rusted bucket, his smile toothy and proud. "That's me," Pops said. "Back in Mississippi, we didn't have running water. I used to wake up at 5 a.m. just to fetch enough to boil for breakfast." Jayden stared at the photo, then looked at the machine in front of him. He hadn't known. "You think they would have laughed at you too?" he asked softly. Pops chuckled. "They did. Still do sometimes, but that never stopped me from building something better. Don't let it stop you either." In the corner of the garage sat a growing pile, discarded PVC pipes, used soda bottles, wire spools from broken headphones. Each one had a purpose in Jayden's mind. Each one had potential, because while his classmates were printing posters, Jayden was building a solution, but with each step forward came whispers behind his back. One day, he overheard two students in the hallway. "He's probably just going to show up with a jug of dirty water and call it a day. I bet he doesn't even have a project. He's just bluffing." Jayden didn't flinch, didn't respond. He just walked by, holding a bag of activated charcoal in one hand and a dream in the other. At night, Pops started calling him Doc. "Hey, Doc, pass me that wrench." "Doc, how's your project doing today?" Jayden would grin. That nickname, it meant more than 1,000 trophies, because in that garage, he wasn't a joke. He was Jayden Evans, future inventor. But just as the project was starting to work, something happened. Something that would push Jayden to the edge. But not yet. First came the moment that changed everything. When he turned, the crank one full rotation, and clean, filtered water trickled out the other end. Cold, clear, beautiful. He stared at it in awe, then looked at Pops and whispered, "It works." Pops didn't speak. He just reached out and pulled Jayden into the proudest hug of his life. 3 days. That's how long was left before the science fair. Jayden had just finished the final version of his project. The machine was compact now, sleek, stable, and quiet. He used parts from an old treadmill to reinforce the crankshaft and replaced the plastic tank with a glass jar for clarity. It worked perfectly every time. Pops called it a miracle in a box. Jayden just called it hope. On Thursday morning, Jayden arrived at school early. The cafeteria had been cleared out. Rows of folding tables lined the room, each marked with name tags. "Science fair setup," the sign said. Jayden rolled in his project, wrapped carefully in blankets, each component nested like glass. He placed it at his assigned table, unfolded his trifold board, smoothed out the title with shaking hands, "Clean Water, Pure Future." Then he stepped back, for a moment. He let himself feel it. Pride, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that sits quietly in your chest, warming the places that were always cold. When the first bell rang, he locked the glass tank with zip ties, just in case. His machine was complete. Safe, ready. Or so he thought. It happened during lunch. Jayden usually ate in the library, but that day he stayed behind, checking his presentation, adjusting the lighting. Then the assistant principal called him to the front office. Paperwork. It took 10 minutes, just 10. When he returned, he knew. Something felt wrong. The glass jar shattered. Water pooled across the table, soaking his display board. The filter, layers, scattered, torn. The crank handle, bent backward, twisted out of alignment. His machine was broken. Jayden froze. The cafeteria was empty now, everyone back in class. But on the edge of his display, someone had left a sticky note. 3 words written in messy capital letters, "Not your place." Jayden stared at it, eyes wide. Breath shallow. His chest burned, not with anger, with something worse. Betrayal. He didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't tell the teacher. He just stood there, hands shaking, staring at the wreckage of what he had built. Not just a project, but part of himself. He packed up slowly. Each broken piece felt heavier than it should. His fingers trembled over the bent frame, the cracked lid. Every turn of the crank, once smooth, now stiff and stuck. He folded the soaked poster board and threw it in the trash. Then he sat, alone, in silence. Later that day, Mason walked by. His locker, grinning. "Yo, heard something happened to your little science thing," he said. "Tough break, bro." Jayden didn't answer. Mason leaned in. "Maybe take the hint next time, stay in your lane." Then he walked off laughing. That night, Jayden didn't go to the garage. He didn't pick up a pencil. He didn't eat dinner. He lay on his bed, eyes open in the dark, replaying every second, every laugh, every look. His dream was crushed. His work destroyed. And the worst part? No one even cared. Pops knocked on the door once, no answer. Then he stepped inside. "You not building tonight, Doc?" Jayden turned his head slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's gone." Pop sat beside him, quiet. Then he asked, "So, what now?" Jayden shrugged. "What's the point? They won." Silence. Then Pop spoke, soft but firm. "They didn't win, Jay. They just scared you, and that ain't the same thing." Jayden looked at him, eyes wet but defiant. "I can't. Build it again in time." Pop smiled gently. "Then don't build it in time. Pause. Build it in truth. Build it because it matters, and let them watch you rebuild it anyway." For a long time, Jayden didn't speak. Then he sat up and said the one word that changed everything. "Okay." He started with the base. The frame had been bent out of shape, twisted like someone had stomped on it. But Jayden used a vice grip, some clamps, and quiet determination. He didn't speak. Not much, but his hands were alive, measured, precise, relentless. It was Friday night. The science fair was Monday. That meant 2 days, 48 hours, no blueprint, no backup, just memory and muscle. Pops brought him a sandwich and a thermos of warm coffee. "You gonna sleep at all?" he asked, half joking. Jayden shook his head, eyes fixed on the new copper coil he was winding by hand. "No time, this has to work." Pops didn't press. He just pulled up a chair, leaned back, and began humming softly. Old soul music, the kind that wrapped around you like a warm jacket. At midnight, Jayden was still soldering wires. His fingers burned from the heat. His eyes stung from exhaustion. But he didn't stop. Every drop of sweat, every callus forming, was a declaration. "I'm still here." The next morning, someone knocked at the garage door. It was Ms. Rivers, the librarian. She held a plastic bag full of supplies, rubber, gaskets, tubing, clamps. "I called in a few favors," she said, smiling. "Figured you could use a miracle or two." Jayden blinked, then nodded. "Thank you." The three of them, Pops, Ms. Rivers, and Jayden, became a kind of dream team. No fancy lab coats, no grants, just belief. Belief that the project mattered. Belief that Jayden mattered. The hours blurred together. Jayden worked through fatigue. He reassembled the filtration layers, rewired the crank, rebuilt the funnel from a cut-up soda bottle and aluminum mesh. This version was better, smarter, simpler, stronger. At 3 a.m. on Sunday, Pops placed his hand on Jayden's shoulder. "Take a break, Doc. Even machines need to recharge." Jayden looked at him, eyes red, lips chapped, voice hoarse. "Can't stop. Not this time." Pops didn't argue. He just stayed. And when Jayden finally tested the system, water flowed through the filters, dripped slowly into the jar. And this time, it was even clearer. Jayden stared at it, his whole body still. Then, without a word, he smiled. The first real smile in days. Monday morning, Jayden walked into school carrying his new project wrapped in a soft towel, held tight like it was something sacred. The same cafeteria, same folding tables, same rows of names. But this time, Jayden wasn't hiding. He wasn't hoping to be invisible. He was ready. As he unpacked the machine, silence fell around him. Mason watched from across the room, expression unreadable. Rachel looked surprised. Others just stared. Jayden didn't flinch. He set up his poster, secured the base, polished the funnel, then took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "Let's show them." The cafeteria buzzed like a beehive. Chatter, footsteps, squeaky shoes on linoleum. Rows of tables were now science stations, each with a project propped up in front. From baking soda volcanoes to how fast do plants grow under rock music. Posters glittered, buttons lit up. Kids rehearsed their speeches nervously, and right in the middle of it all stood Jayden, still, focused, calm, but inside. His heart thundered, not from fear, from purpose. He looked around. Mason had built some kind of hoverboard concept. It buzzed loudly but barely moved. Rachel had a colorful board about sugar and soda. Others had store-bought kits dressed up to look impressive. Jayden's table, simple. No gimmicks, no lights. Just a small, compact device, a clear glass jar, and a handwritten explanation of kinetic water purification. Underneath it, a sign Pops had made. Clean water should never be a luxury. The first judge walked over. Mr. Stanton, a retired engineer with sharp glasses and sharper eyes. He didn't smile. "So, what do we have here?" he asked. Jayden straightened up, took a breath. "This is a kinetic-powered water filtration unit," he said, voice steady. "It requires no electricity, just motion." He began to demonstrate, turning the crank, explaining the layers, pointing to each material with care. The motion generates energy through magnets and coils. That powers the pump, drawing water through 3 levels of filtration: charcoal, gravel, and fabric. He poured in water dyed faintly yellow, turned the crank. The water began to move through the clear tubing, trickled. And after a few seconds, clean, clear water dripped into the jar. The judge leaned in, took a closer look, then he nodded once. "Very clever," he said. "Did you design this yourself?" Jayden paused, then nodded. "Yes, sir. After my original model was damaged, I rebuilt it over the weekend." Stanton raised an eyebrow. "Rebuilt? In 2 days?" Jayden didn't flinch. "Yes." The judge scribbled notes, said nothing more, then walked to the next table. Jayden exhaled slowly. His palms were sweaty, but he didn't wipe them. He stood tall. Another judge came, then another. Each one asked more, detailed questions, and with every answer, Jayden grew more confident. They were finally listening. Really listening. Not to his voice, not to his skin, but to his mind. Nearby, Mason stood watching, his arms folded, his eyes narrow. Jayden met his gaze, just for a moment, then looked away. He had nothing to prove to him, only to himself. The final judge was Ms. Chang, head of the Regional Science Committee. She didn't say much at first. She just watched. Let Jayden explain everything. Halfway through his presentation, her hand stopped taking notes. She simply listened. When Jayden finished, she asked, "What made you build this?" Jayden hesitated, then looked her in the eye. "Because I've seen people drink water they shouldn't have to. Because I want to help. And because people like Bree aren't supposed to be in this room." Pause. "But I am." She said nothing for a long time, then she smiled. Not wide, not fake, just proud. "Thank you, Jayden." She walked away, and Jayden stood there, heart racing, hands trembling, but this time not from nerves, from power. As the final bell rang and students began to pack up, Jayden heard something behind him, a voice. "Hey!" He turned. It was Rachel. She walked over slowly, biting her lip. "Your project, and it's really good," she said. Jayden nodded. "Thanks." She looked at the ground. "I'm sorry I never, spoke up." Jayden didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "You just did." As the cafeteria emptied, Jayden sat on the edge of his table, watching sunlight spill through the high windows. He wasn't sure if he'd win, but somehow it didn't matter, because for the first time in a long time, he felt seen, really seen, and that was enough. For now. The cafeteria had never felt so still. Hundreds of students, dozens of teachers, parents, judges, reporters, but all of them quiet. Principal Dawson stepped onto the small stage at the front. A microphone crackled. He cleared his throat. "Thank you all for an incredible science fair. The talent, the effort, the creativity this year. Truly inspiring." He scanned the crowd. "Before we announce our winners, I want to remind everyone, this isn't just about science. It's about imagination, purpose, and the courage to try, even when people don't believe in you." Some kids smiled. Others rolled their eyes. Jayden, he stood in the back, arms crossed, heart pounding, trying not to hope too much. "Now, our third place winner," a girl squealed. Polite applause. "Second place," another cheer. A hug from her parents. Flashes. The phone cameras. Jayden's chest tightened. He forced himself to breathe. One more name, just one, and he was almost sure it wouldn't be his. And this year's first place winner, a pause, a heartbeat. For a groundbreaking design in clean energy water purification, Mr. Jayden Evans. The silence shattered. Gasps, murmurs. Some clapped right away, others just stared. Mason's mouth hung slightly open. Rachel's hands flew to her mouth, and Jayden, he didn't move. Not at first, you blinked. Then Pop stood up from the back corner. His voice boomed, "Go on, Doc." And that broke the spell. Jayden walked slowly through the crowd. Each step felt unreal, like he was walking in someone else's story. But this was his, every stare, every whisper. He felt them, but he didn't shrink. He stood taller. He climbed the steps, took the ribbon from the judge's hand, then turned to the mic. Principal Dawson smiled. "Would you like to say a few words?" Jayden hesitated, then stepped forward. The mic was too tall. He pulled it down gently. It squeaked. He took a breath and began. "I know most of you didn't expect this. Honestly, neither did I." Nervous laughter scattered. "I wasn't the loudest in class. I wasn't the most popular. A lot of the time, I wasn't even seen." Pause. "Some people laughed at me, said I couldn't do this, said I shouldn't even try." Longer pause. No one spoke. But I kept building. I kept learning. Not because I wanted to prove anyone wrong. He looked up. But because I wanted to prove something right. The room held its breath. I built this project in a garage, with parts from trash, with help from people who believed in me, even when others didn't. He turned toward the back of the room. "Thank you, Pops. Thank you, Ms. Rivers." Pops wiped his eyes. Ms. Rivers clasped her hands over her heart. "And to the kids who think they don't belong in rooms like this, you do. Keep showing up, keep building. One day they won't be able to ignore you." Silence, then one clap, then two. Then the whole room stood up, applause. Loud, long, real. Jayden stepped back from the mic, and for the first time in his life, he felt like the whole world had stopped laughing. The ribbon still felt unreal in Jayden's hands, a soft blue strip of silk, gold lettering. First place. He kept staring at it like it might vanish if he blinked too long. Pops had taken 100 pictures already. Ms. Rivers wiped away tears between every shot. But Jayden? He stood quietly in the middle of the now half-empty cafeteria, as if the ground beneath him had changed. Forever. That afternoon, announcements rang through the intercom. Congratulations to Jayden Evans, winner of this year's science fair. He will represent Silver Ridge Middle School at the State Science Expo next month in Chicago. Jayden sat still in class. Everyone turned to look. Some nodded, some just stared, and some clapped. One by one, hands followed hands. Claps filled the room like a slow ripple. Jayden didn't smile, but his eyes, they shined. At his locker after school, Mason approached. Jayden turned, silence stretched between them. Then Mason spoke, voice lower than usual. Look, about the project and all that stuff I said. He didn't finish. Jayden waited. I was a jerk, Mason mumbled. You didn't deserve that. He looked away. Jayden said nothing. Mason added, I guess I just didn't think you'd actually make something like that. I didn't think someone like you, he trailed off. Regret sat heavy on his shoulders. Jayden closed his locker, then looked at him. It's not about what you thought. It's about what you never cared to learn. Mason blinked. Jayden wasn't angry, he wasn't loud, just real. You don't get to erase it with one apology, Jayden added. But thanks for saying it. He started to walk away, then paused. You want to learn more? Come to the next science club meeting. We need people who build, not break. He didn't wait for an answer, but as Jayden disappeared down the hallway, Mason stood in place, eyes thoughtful. The following week, a flyer went up. STEM for All. Student-led initiative by Jayden Evans. Open to everyone. No judgment. Just ideas. Jayden spoke to the principal, got permission to use the old AV room as a lab. By Friday, 15 students signed up. Not all of them were science whizzes. Some were just curious. Some wanted to help. And a few, like Mason, showed up. Quiet, ready to listen. Ms. Rivers donated books. Pops brought in a box of spare tools, and Jayden? He shared everything he knew, not for credit, not for praise, but because knowledge once hidden was now his to share. One afternoon, after club ended, Rachel walked up to him again. You changed things, she said. Jayden shrugged. Not really. She smiled. No, you did. People talk about you now, in a good way. Not just the project, you. Jayden looked at her. I didn't want attention. I just wanted space. She nodded. Well, now you have both. At home, Pops framed the ribbon. Hung it next to the photo of himself as a kid at the well, now 2 generations side by side, one pulling water, the other cleaning it. Jayden stared at them one night, thinking how far they'd come and how much further he could go. Later that night, he opened his notebook, turned to a fresh page, and at the top he wrote, Next project, solar-powered micro-greenhouse. Underneath, he wrote something else, in small capital letters. Never stop building. The letter came on a Tuesday, folded crisp, tucked inside a thick white envelope with a gold seal. Jayden found it in his locker. No return name, no explanation, just 3 words on the front. For Jayden Evans. He opened it slowly, unfolded the paper. Read the heading. International Youth Science Initiative, Chicago Division. Congratulations, Jayden. We saw your project, and we were inspired. We would like to invite you to present your invention at the Global Young Innovators Summit next month. All travel, lodging, and materials will be provided. We believe the world needs to see what you've built. Jayden stared at the page. Once, twice, then again. The world? He sat on the floor beside his locker, eyes wide, fingers gripping the letter like it might fly away. People passed by. Bell rang. None of it registered. The world wanted him, not just to compete, but to speak, to lead. That night he told Pops. Pops didn't say anything right away. He just leaned back in his chair, looked at Jayden, then smiled. The kind of smile that says, I knew this day would come. He walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of root beer, raised his glass. To the world, Doc, and to the boy who never stopped building, even when it felt like no one was watching. Jayden raised his glass too. Clink. The next few days moved like a dream. Emails, forms, flight details. Teachers congratulated him. Kids he barely knew asked for selfies. Even Mrs. Hamilton, who once passed over his raised hand, pulled him aside. Jayden, I just want you to know, you're an incredible young man. Jayden looked at her, polite, calm. Thank you, Mrs. Hamilton, I'm just getting started. Rachel made a flyer. Support Jayden, our homegrown genius. She handed it out at lunch, set up a donation jar for new supplies. Mason dropped in a $10 bill. No one made fun of him. Not anymore. When the local newspaper showed up, Jayden sat for an interview. The reporter asked, "What do you hope people take away from your story?" Jayden paused, then answered, "That Brilliance doesn't have a look. It doesn't wear designer sneakers or sit at the front of the class. Brilliance hides in garages. It walks home alone. It gets laughed at before it gets clapped for." The reporter blinked. Jayden smiled. But when it shows up, it changes everything. The article went viral. Parents shared it. STEM clubs reposted it. An education nonprofit reached out to sponsor Jayden for the next 3 years. Even the school board issued a public statement. Jayden Evans represents the resilience and excellence we should all aspire to support. The same board that once overlooked him, now they wanted him on the front page. But Jayden didn't let it go to his head. Each night he still walked into the garage, still tinkered, still tested new designs. He wasn't building for trophies anymore. He was building for impact. One evening, Pops brought out an old cardboard box. Inside, photos, blueprints, newspaper clippings yellowed with age. "These were your father's," he said quietly. He dreamed of doing something like this, but the world wasn't ready. Jayden touched the papers gently. "Maybe now it is." Pops nodded. "And maybe you're the reason it is." The stage was bigger than anything Jayden had ever seen. Lights, cameras, rows of chairs filled with students, scientists, educators from over 30 countries. It was the Global Young Innovators Summit, held in a high-tech convention center in downtown Chicago. Jayden stood backstage, in his hand. In his machine, smaller now, more refined, fitted into a sleek, transparent case. But in his mind, the garage, the broken model, the kids who laughed, the hands that helped him rebuild. A voice came through the speakers. "Now please welcome from Silver Ridge Middle School, Jayden Evans, inventor of the kinetic-powered clean water system." The applause started slowly, then grew. Jayden stepped into the light. For a second, he blinked under the brightness. Then, he walked forward. Not fast, not slow, but steady. He reached the podium, adjusted the mic, then looked out at the sea of faces. Judges, students, people who had no idea what he'd been through. He began, "My name is Jayden Evans. I come from a small school, from a small neighborhood, from a small garage." Pause. "But the size of your start doesn't determine the size of your story." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. "I built this because I saw a problem. Because my grandfather once had to walk miles for clean water. Because I know there are kids out there who still do." He held up the machine. "This isn't just plastic and wires, it's an idea. That we can solve big problems with small tools, when we're given the space to build." Jayden scanned the crowd. I wasn't the kid people believed in. I was the one they laughed. A few heads nodded. But I kept going because one voice told me I could, and now I want to be that voice for someone else. He took a breath. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or told you didn't belong, this is your reminder you do. And one day you won't just be in the room, you'll change the room. The auditorium erupted. Standing ovation. Applause thundered off the walls. Jayden didn't cry. But in the back row, Pops did. So did Ms. Rivers. So did Rachel. Watching on the live stream from school, holding her phone tight. That night, Jayden's story aired on national news. They called him the boy who built his way to the world stage. Offers rolled in. Scholarships. STEM program invitations. Even an invitation to speak at the United Nations Youth Assembly. But through it all, Jayden stayed grounded. Because his goal was never the spotlight. It was the impact. A month later, new photo hung on the wall of the Silver Ridge cafeteria. Jayden, standing tall at the summit stage, ribbon around his neck, invention in his hand. Above it, a plaque. He was laughed at until he led. And in the garage, where it all began, Pops added a second frame beside the first, Jayden's machine. Jayden's ribbon. Jayden's words, printed on a card. Never stop building, especially when they tell you to stop. That garage would later become a community workshop. Jayden donated his grant money to build it. Kids from all backgrounds came there after school, to create, to explore, to belong. On the front of the building, in big bold letters, it said, "The Jayden Evans Innovation." La Band underneath. One simple line. For every kid who was told they couldn't. And somewhere in some classroom, when a quiet kid in the back raises their hand, someone sees them. Because Jayden showed the world. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to keep building, even when they laugh.